In 1989, 5 kids vanished overnight from a small, peaceful town in Indiana. No trace, no sound, just silence. And now, more than 3 decades later, what the FBI just uncovered in the ruins of an old farmhouse has left even the most seasoned agents speechless. This isn't just another mystery. This is a story of loss, of fear, of a darkness so real it still echoes through the walls. But what happened to those children? Why were they never found until now? Wherever you're watching from, let us know. In the comments, what country are you enjoying this story from? And if you're ready to go deep into one of the most chilling and emotional stories you've ever heard, make sure to subscribe because this is only the beginning. In the summer of 1989, in a sleepy Midwestern town no one remembers anymore, 5 children went out to play and never came home. The town was called Harvest Hollow, one of those blink and you'll miss it specks on the map of Indiana. A place where church bells still rang on Sundays, where the general store doubled as the post office, and where you could leave your door unlocked without a second thought. It was the kind of town where nothing ever happened until everything did. No skyscrapers, no sirens, just rows of clapboard houses and families who knew each other by name. The kind of place where people didn't just live, they stayed. Roots ran deep and secrets even deeper. It was the last week of August. 1989. The sun had taken on that late summer glow, the kind that makes golden hour feel like a secret the earth keeps only for itself. Kids were running through the fields, chasing dragonflies, and pretending they were superheroes. The corn stood tall, taller than most grown men, and the cicadas buzzed so loud it became part of the air you breathed. That summer felt endless, timeless, like nothing could go wrong. 5 kids. Their names were etched in the hearts of every person who lived in Harvest Hollow. Benjamin Benny Walker, 11, the quiet one who sketched superheroes in his notebook. Emily Grace Monroe, 10, the girl with the loud laugh and scraped knees. Noah and Nathaniel Nate Riley, 9-year-old twins who could finish each other's sentences. And Sarah Lynn Cooper, 12, the oldest of the group, an unofficial leader. She had a way of pulling people toward her like gravity. The 5 of them were inseparable. That afternoon, they rode their bikes to the edge of the woods like they had 100 times before. They told their parents they were heading to the old Harmon farmhouse, a place wrapped in more rumors than truth. A rotting relic from another era, long abandoned and swallowed by trees. Some said it was haunted, others said it was just dangerous. But for kids like them, it was the perfect place for adventure. They never came back. It wasn't panic at first. Dinner was set, and 5 places went untouched. Parents shrugged, assumed. The kids were just losing track of time. The sun dipped below the horizon. Porch lights flickered on, kind of lights that used to signal, "Come home now." But the bikes never returned. By 9 p.m., the police were called. By midnight, the whole town was in the woods with flashlights and flares. The search lasted 6 weeks. No signs, no screams, no blood. Nothing. Just 5 bikes propped neatly outside. The Harmon farmhouse, not thrown, it's not discarded, parked, as if they meant to come back. Inside the farmhouse, there were signs of trespassing. Dust disturbed. Footprints in the grime. But no signs of struggle. No evidence. And then one by one, the search parties gave up. The FBI closed the file. Families held funerals without bodies. Graves without coffins. Harvest Hollow was never the same. The town grew quieter, as if the echo of those children still lingered. Parents aged overnight, smiles faded, laughter became a memory. Businesses shut down, people moved away. Only the most stubborn stayed, or the most broken. And the Harmon farmhouse, it just stood there, watching, waiting. In 2025, something changed. The Harmon farmhouse, untouched since 1989, had long become a dangerous husk. Kids stayed away, partly because of the ghost stories, partly because the structure was falling apart. The land had become state property, and the farmhouse was scheduled for demolition. But when demolition crews arrived with bulldozers and permits, they found something the investigators never did: a sealed cellar door. hidden beneath a layer of floorboards that hadn't been touched in decades. It was discovered by accident. Worker had stepped through a rotten plank and nearly fallen through. When they pulled the boards away, they found rusted hinges and a thick iron handle, bolted shut with heavy nails and old iron brackets. Not something time had forgotten. Something someone wanted hidden. The first person to descend into the cellar was a contractor named Luis Ramirez. He was a no-nonsense type, had been on dozens of demolitions. But this was different. The smell hit him first. Not rot. Not mold, but something old, preserved, like opening a sealed tomb. Flashlights flickered down the wooden stairs. Air was still dead. Then they saw the drawings. Dozens of them. Hundreds, maybe. Pinned to the walls, scattered across the floor. Children's sketches done in crayon and pencil. Superheroes, trees, a girl with pigtails, 2 boys holding hands. A farmhouse with dark windows. The names were on the backs. Benny, Emily, Nate, Noah, Sarah. And then in the far corner they found something else. A handwritten note dated September 3rd, 1989, just days after the kids vanished. It read, "We're still here. We don't know how long it's been. Time feels weird. The man in the walls watches us sleep, but we're not giving up. We won't let him win. We remember who we are." The handwriting was shaky, childlike. And on the last line it read, "Tell our parents we're still fighting." News traveled fast, too fast. By morning, FBI agents were on site, the farmhouse surrounded in tape and tension. Porters flocked in from across the country. The parents gray-haired now, their voices weaker, but their grief no less potent stood. Behind barricades, waiting for something they hadn't dared hope for in 3 decades. The FBI refused to release full details, but rumors started swirling about hidden rooms, about a possible underground network, about old surveillance equipment found embedded in the walls, but more than anything, about a voice, an audio cassette, found near the children's drawings, and on it the unmistakable sound of a child saying, "He's coming back." Harvest Hollow became a town reborn in pain. For some, hope bloomed again. Maybe they weren't dead. Maybe they had been taken somewhere, kept alive. For others, the resurfacing of this horror was worse than the silence. The FBI brought in specialists, psychologists, cryptologists, exorcists even, because what they found in the cellar didn't just defy explanation, it challenged reality. Some drawings were fresh. The ink hadn't even dried. But there was no one. Down there, no bodies, no bones. Just memories trapped in paper. It started with the whisper. Luis Ramirez had just climbed out of the cellar when he heard it. So faint, he thought it was the wind threading through the broken shingles. It was like a voice had written on the draft, just one word, wait. He paused mid-step on the porch, eyes scanning the dead grass and woods beyond. But there was nothing, just silence, thick and unmoving. Helena Briggs arrived 2 days later. She wasn't the kind of woman who frightened easily. She had spent 2 decades investigating crimes the public never heard about. The missing, the buried, the forgotten. She walked with the authority of someone who'd seen the worst and survived it. But standing in front of the Harmon farmhouse, even she admitted something didn't feel right. She read the reports, saw the drawings, listened to the audio tape. She studied the note dated just days after the kids vanished. None of it made sense. The cellar had been sealed tight, no exit, no other entrance. The drawings were fresh, and the cassette hadn't degraded as it should have over 36 years. Someone has been here, she told the local sheriff. Or still is. They sectioned off the property. Drones surveyed from the sky. Cadaver dogs sniffed every inch. Ground-penetrating radar swept beneath the foundation. But nothing showed up until the second room was found. The tunnel behind the cellar was narrow and low, like it hadn't been built for adults. It twisted through the earth like a burrow. No light, just dirt walls and the sound of breath. It led to a chamber, smaller than a bedroom, just high enough to stand in. On the walls, handprints, tiny ones, dozens, scraped into the surface, etched, with fingernails or broken pencils. In the center, a wooden chair. Beside it, a scratched message carved into the wall. He watches from the wood. And below it, a date. September 2nd, 1989. Helena stood in that room longer than anyone else. She didn't speak, just stared at the handprints. Another tunnel led farther in. The deeper they dug, the more they found. Rooms built without logic. Ladders. Leading nowhere. Doors that opened to walls. It was like someone had tried to replicate the farmhouse underground and everywhere drawings. Each one worse than the last. It depicted not just a man, but a shadow with arms too long, no eyes, always in the background, sometimes peeking from behind corners, sometimes from the ceiling. In one image, he was kneeling beside a child's bed, one hand pressed to their mouth. The drawings changed over time. The kid's handwriting got shakier. The colors grew darker, the messages more urgent. He's pretending to be our dad now. We don't sleep at the same time anymore. We forgot Benny's real voice. Each note was a small tragedy, a glimpse into how fear had worn them down, piece by piece. But then came something even more disturbing. The logs, handwritten in Sarah Cooper's strong, tall lettering. She had kept track of days, weeks, maybe years, but the logs didn't match. The reworld timeline. According to her records, they'd been down there for just over a year, not 30-6. The FBI brought in time. Distortion experts, physicists, theories were thrown around psychological manipulation, environmental conditions, mass hallucinations. None explained the freshness of the ink. Or why a brand new sketch of Emily, dated August 2025, appeared 2 days after Helena's arrival, because it hadn't been there before. They watched the cellar. After that, cameras, sensors, infrared, motion detectors, nothing, and then, at 2:37 a.m. on a Thursday, one camera picked up something. Not a person, not an animal, just a distortion, a ripple in the air, like heat over pavement. It hovered in front of the far wall for 4 seconds, then disappeared. When Helena reviewed the footage, she didn't speak. She simply ordered another sweep. This time, they found the attic door. No one had bothered with the attic. Everyone had been focused underground. But when they opened the hatch, the smell of dust and age hit like a wave. There, in the far corner, under a tarp, was a trunk. And inside, dozens of VHS tapes, each labeled with nothing more than a date. They took the tapes back to the lab, connected an old player, pressed play, static, then color. A room familiar. The living room of the farmhouse, and 5 children. Alive, Benny sat on the floor drawing. Emily was brushing Sarah's hair. The twins were playing with action figures. The timestamp read August 27th, 1989. No sound, just visuals. The next tape showed the same room, but dimmer. Shadows were longer. Sarah was staring at the ceiling. Benny had stopped drawing. One twin was crying. The third tape showed all 5 standing in front of the camera. Sarah stepped forward. Her lips moved, no sound. Then she pointed at the lens. Her face stern, urgent. She held up a piece of paper. The image was blurry, but Helena froze the frame. Zoomed in. Words written in marker. He's in the tapes. And at the bottom, circled twice. Help us remember. The lab technician handling the VHS tapes was named Jeremy Price, 28 years old. Quiet, focused, and good at his job. He had no personal connection to the case, no emotional stake in it, till he watched tape 5. Jeremy had been reviewing the footage for hours. The tapes weren't labeled in order, just dates scrawled in black marker. August 28th, 1989. September 1st. September 6. He cross-referenced them with the timeline in Sarah Cooper's journal from the cellar, and things didn't match. The children looked the same in every video. Same clothes, same pale expressions, same hollow eyes. As if they were frozen in time or kept in the same exact moment. Tape 5 was different. It started the same way grainy, flickering black and white static before resolving into the familiar farmhouse living room. But the camera angle, had changed, was lower, like someone had moved it, or like someone much shorter had taken over filming. There was a sound now, not voices, not music. A humming. Jeremy leaned in. It was a child's voice, humming a lullaby, off-key, slow. It came from somewhere off-screen. Then Benny walked into frame, but he didn't sit down to draw like he usually did. Stood still, staring directly into the camera. His lips moved. This time, audio picked it up. "Are you still watching us?" Jeremy's fingers hovered over the pause button, but he didn't press it. "I hope you are," Benny whispered, "because if you stop, he comes back." Jeremy's breath caught. He fast-forwarded. The screen blurred into white streaks and then resolved again. All 5 children were now on screen. They stood in a line, holding hands. Behind them, the living room window showed nothing but black dot. Sarah stepped forward again, holding another sign. "Remember our names?" Then Emily took her place, holding a second sign. "Don't listen to him." Then Nate and Noah together. One sign in each hand. "He says, he's our father." Benny was last. His sign said, "But he lies." And then, from somewhere off-screen, came the sound of footsteps. Not slow. Not cautious. Heavy. Measured. Each step a THUNDERCLA. Because the kids turned and looked toward the sound. The camera shook. The screen went black. Helena reviewed the tape. Twice. She had it enhanced, slowed down, filtered. Every expert she called gave her the same answer. The children in the video hadn't aged. At all. And there was no sign of any editing. No indication the tapes were faked. But what struck her most wasn't the message or the footage. It was what Jeremy said when she met him in the observation room. "I think they're still in there," he said to Helena, frowned. "We searched the whole house." "No," Jeremy said. "I mean, in the tapes. Somehow, they're still inside the recordings." It sounded insane. But then, everything about this case was insane. The tapes were sent to Washington. A joint task force was formed. The Bureau wanted answers. What was this? A kidnapping case? A time loop? A psychological experiment? Or something else? They ran the videos through advanced AI systems, ones used for facial recognition, deepfake detection, even top-secret anomaly mapping, and one detail kept showing up always missed by the naked eye. Always present if you knew where to look in. Every frame where the children appeared, in the shadows behind them, there was a shape. A sliver of a shoulder, a slanted face. White eyes, the man in the walls. On tape 9, the children began to disappear. One by one. Sarah was the first. She was sitting by the fireplace. The next, she blinked out, like a candle snuffed. Emily disappeared in tape 10. The twins in tape 11. Benny vanished on tape 12. Tape 13 was the last. Nothing but the living room. Empty. Still, but the camera kept recording. And for exactly 36 minutes and 12 seconds, nothing moved. Then, at the end, a whisper, "You stopped watching." Helena ordered the tape sealed. But that night, in the dark confines of the farmhouse attic, she returned alone. She brought an old TV, a VCR, tape 5. She played it from the beginning, then stopped it right before the footsteps began, and she spoke aloud. "I'm still watching." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the television flickered. The 5 children were back on screen, but this time they were all staring at her. Sarah reached toward the screen, her fingers pressed flat. Against the glass, Benny mouthed the words, "Find the door." Oh, the screen shattered. The shattered glass from the TV screen lay scattered on the dusty floor. Glinting faintly in the moonlight that spilled through the attic window, Lena's heart pounded loud enough to drown out the silence that had settled around her. She had spoken the words aloud, a simple phrase meant to prove she was watching in now. Somehow, the children had responded. "Find the door." Those words echoed in her mind, relentless and urgent. What door? Where? The Harmon farmhouse felt colder now, as if the walls themselves had taken a breath and were holding it in. Helena gathered the broken glass carefully, her fingers trembling, and pressed her palms against the attic walls. Searching for any sign of the door, the children had whispered about hours past. The house creaked and groaned, a tired beast awakening. Her flashlight caught on something unusual. Behind a loose section of wallpaper near the attic's corner, a faint outline of a doorframe, hidden beneath layers of peeling paper and dust. She pressed her hand against it. It was cold, solid. It gave under gentle pressure. Her breath hitched. She reached for the small crowbar in her bag and carefully pried the wall loose. The door slowly swung open on rusty hinges, revealing a narrow, dark passage leading downwards. The air smelled different here. Damp, metallic, and something else. Helena couldn't place a hint of faint sweetness, like old perfume left to fade. She grabbed her flashlight and stepped inside. The staircase was tight and spiraled down into darkness. The walls were carved stone, ancient and worn. She descended. The air grew thicker, heavier, as though the house itself was warning her. To turn back at the bottom was a small room lit only by the dim glow of her flashlight. In the center stood a wooden door, different from the rest of the house, newer, polished, and carved with strange symbols that seemed to pulse faintly under her gaze. On the floor were more drawings, pinned carefully to the cold stone. They depicted the 5 children, their faces brighter here, but the shadow behind them still lingered, twisted and dark. Like smoke trapped in glass, Helena knelt to examine a note taped beneath the drawings. It was in Sarah's handwriting again. "We found the door, but he guards it. We cannot open it alone. You must come inside. Help us." The weight of the words settled on Helena like a stone. This wasn't just a mystery. It was a plea, a call for help. She reached out and pressed her hand to the door, feeling the pulse of energy beneath the wood. A sudden chill ran through her, and the shadows in the room seemed to stretch and flicker. The door began to creak open. Beyond was a darkness so deep it swallowed her flashlight's beam. She hesitated, then stepped inside. The air shifted. Sounds emerged, soft whispers, the faintest laughter, the patter of small footsteps. She was not alone, and in the darkest corner a faint light glimmered. The journey had only just begun. The darkness inside the mysterious door was nearly suffocating. Helena's flashlight cut through the black like a fragile sword, revealing narrow stone walls slick with moisture. Each breath she took came out in small clouds, mingling with the stale air of the hidden chamber. The faint sounds, whispers, and footsteps grew louder, as if drawing her deeper into the earth. Her heart thundered. But she pushed forward, knowing the truth about the vanished children awaited her somewhere ahead. As she moved through the winding passage, the walls began to change. Rough stone gave way to timber beams and old brickwork. The floor beneath her boots was uneven, worn by time and secrecy. A faint glow shimmered ahead, pale and wavering, as if the room beyond was breathing. She reached a heavy wooden door, its surface carved with the same cryptic symbols she'd seen before. With a trembling hand, Helena pushed it open, and the dim light spilled into the passage. Inside was a room unlike any she'd expected. It was a small, enclosed space, but not empty. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with jars filled with strange objects, twisted roots, faded photographs, old keys, and scraps of torn fabric. Candles, long burned down 2 stubs, sat abandoned in iron holders. In the center, a child's bed stood, made neatly despite decades of neglect. On the far wall, a series of drawings was taped carefully, layered one over another. As Helena stepped closer, she recognized the familiar faces: Benny, Emily, Nate, Noah, and Cyril, sketched with childlike innocence but haunted eyes. Beneath each drawing was a short message in Sarah's handwriting. "We are not alone. The man watches. He hides behind the walls. We hear his footsteps. We are scared." Helena swallowed hard, the weight of their fear pressing down on her like the thick stone walls around her. Why? She ran her fingers over the drawings, feeling the faint indentation of pencil strokes, the smear of crayon wax. These were not just memories. They were a record of a long, desperate struggle. On the floor near the bed, she spotted a small, battered notebook. Its cover was cracked leather, stained and worn. She opened it to find pages filled with neat writing, letters interspersed with drawings, and a diary entry dated August 31st, 1989. We hear him come at night. He talks to us through the walls, tells us things. But we don't listen. We hold tight to each other. He wants us to be afraid, but we are brave. We will find a way out. We have to. Helena's breath caught. These words were alive, raw, echoing. Through time, she felt a surge of connection, a bridge between past and present. Suddenly, a soft sound interrupted her thoughts, a faint tapping like fingernails against wood. She spun around, flashlight beam darting over the room. But nothing moved. The tapping grew louder, more urgent. Coming from behind the wall next to the bed, Helena pressed her ear to the cold wood. "Help," whispered a voice so faint she almost didn't hear it. A chill ran down her spine. She found a loose panel and carefully pried it open. Inside was a small cavity, just large enough to hide a hand or something smaller. Her fingers brushed against a cold metal object. It was a key, the key to a lock she hadn't yet found. Helena's mind raced. What door did this open?
Was it freedom?
Or a deeper prison? The whispers returned, this time louder and more insistent. "We're waiting. We believe. We remember." And then, clear as day, Sarah's voice called out, "Find the truth. Set us free." Helena clutched the key tightly, knowing that the next step would take her deeper into the darkness and closer to the answers that had eluded everyone. The key felt cold and heavy in Helena's palm, a small but potent symbol of hope and dread tangled together. She stared at it for a long moment, trying to steady her racing thoughts. The whispers of the children still echoed softly through the hidden room, urging her onward. Outside, the night pressed against the farmhouse like a thick velvet curtain, dark and endless. Helena knew that whatever door this key opened would lead her deeper into the heart of the mystery, perhaps closer to the children themselves. She pocketed the key and rose from the floor, the wooden bed creaking beneath her weight. Her flashlight swept across the room one last time. The shelves, the jars, the faded drawings, they all felt like pieces of a puzzle. Shards of a story she was only beginning to understand. Back in the main floor of the farmhouse, Helena began a methodical search. Each creaking floorboard and faded wallpaper was scrutinized for signs of a hidden lock or a door concealed behind time's careful masking. Hours passed. Sweat trickled down her back despite the chill in the air. Her breath came in shallow bursts, her heart a persistent drumbeat in her ears. Finally, near the far wall of the living room, the same room where the children had appeared on the tape sheet, found it. A small panel, no larger than a book, carved into the baseboard and almost invisible beneath layers of dust and grime. Her fingers trembled as she inserted the key. It fit perfectly. With a soft click, the panel swung inward to reveal a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Helena took a deep breath and stepped down, flashlight in hand. The air grew colder still, thick with the scent of earth and something. Metallic, faint, but unmistakable blood. The stairway opened into a cavernous underground chamber, walls rough-hewn stone dripping with moisture. At its center was an iron door, ancient and heavy, covered with symbols that pulsed faintly like the heartbeat she felt earlier. As Helena approached, the door seemed to hum, a low vibration under her fingertips. Suddenly, the whispers exploded into voices, overlapping and urgent, flooding the chamber. Behind the door, "Don't open. Help us." But above all, one voice rose, clear and commanding. It was Sarah's. "Open it, Helena. We're trapped." Her fingers shook as she grasped the rusted iron handle. The door groaned as it slowly began to swing open, revealing a dimly lit room. Beyond, inside, Helena saw them. 5 small figures huddled together, eyes wide, bodies trembling. It was Benny, Emily, Nate, Noah, and Sarah, unchanged by time. As if the years had folded over them but never touched their flesh, tears streamed down Helena's face as she whispered, "I'm here. You're not alone." The children looked up, relief and fear mingling in their eyes. "Please, Sarah said softly. "Help us get out." Helena reached out her hand, and for the first time in 36 years, the children took it. Outside, the farmhouse creaked, its walls groaning, as if waking from a long nightmare. But the story was far from over. Helena's hand trembled as it clasped Sarah's small fingers. The other children looked on with wide, guarded eyes, their faces etched with a mixture of hope, fear, and disbelief. For so many years they had been trapped in that hidden chamber, caught in a limbo between worlds, unseen by those who loved them, heard by the world outside. Helena took a slow, steadying breath and looked into each of their faces. Benny's shy smile, Emily's bright eyes, the twin boys' cautious nods, and Sarah's determined gaze. This was no longer a story of disappearance. It was a story of survival, of resistance, hope. "Let's get you out of here," Helena whispered. The journey back up the dark staircase was slow. The children clung to her, fragile but unbroken. The farmhouse seemed to hum around them, walls groaning as if in pain or relief. Outside, the first blush of dawn was beginning to seep into the sky, a pale promise of new beginnings. As Helena pushed open the front door, the cool morning air rushed in, filled with the scent of dew and earth. The children blinked, overwhelmed by light and sound. Birds chirped tentatively, a world that had gone on without them. News spread quickly. The authorities arrived, but Helena insisted on handling the first moments herself. She sat with the children on the front porch steps, wrapped in blankets, her hands held tightly in hers. For the first time since that summer night in 1989, the children spoke not in whispers or drawings, but with words. "We were scared," Sarah said softly, "but we never gave up, remembered who we were, and we waited for someone to find us." The town of Harvest Hollow, long marked by sorrow and silence, stirred awake once again. News crews flooded in, families gathered, and hope flickered like a fragile flame in the hearts of those who had waited 3 decades. But with hope came questions. How had the children survived? Who was the man they feared? What had kept them hidden for so long? Lana knew the answers would not come easily. The farmhouse still held its secret shadows that refused to fade, its whispers that lingered in the corners. But one thing was certain: the children had returned. Their story was far from over. As the sun rose higher, painting the town in golden light, Helena looked out over Harvest Hollow and vowed to uncover every hidden truth. Because sometimes the darkest mysteries lead to the brightest hope. The sun had barely climbed over the horizon, yet the town of Harvest Hollow was already buzzing with activity. News crews clamored for interviews, neighbors gathered at the edges of the street, and the once quiet town square was flooded with a tidal wave of emotion, hope, disbelief, and an aching longing that had been buried for decades. Helena watched from a distance, her thoughts heavy with the weight of what had just happened. The children's return was miraculous, yes, but it also reopened wounds that many thought had long healed. The loss, the unanswered questions, the silence, all of it came rushing back like a flood. In the days that followed, Helena spent every waking moment with the children. They were fragile, their bodies thin and pale, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. They spoke cautiously, as if testing the waters of this new world. Their memories fragmented but vivid. They told her about the man in the walls. The dark presence that had watched them, whispered to them, and kept them prisoner. But they also spoke of their resilience, how they clung to each other, how they held on to hope, how they had drawn pictures and written notes to remember who they were. The townspeople began to heal tentatively. Families reunited, friends embraced. But beneath the surface, a current of fear remained. The farmhouse, once just an old, forgotten relic, had become a symbol of terror and of survival. Helena pored over every scrap of evidence, every note, every drawing. She discovered more hidden compartments in the farmhouse. Secret rooms filled with items that told stories of captivity and courage. The walls seemed to breathe history. Each creak and whisper a reminder of the past. One evening, as Helena sat alone in the farmhouse's main room, she found herself drawn to a small dust-covered box tucked beneath a loose floorboard. Inside were old tapes, audio recordings made by the children. Their voices, soft and trembling, told stories of hope, fear, and the unbreakable bond that had kept them alive. Listening to those tapes, Helena realized that this was more than a mystery to be solved. It was a story of human spirit, of light. Breaking through darkness, voices finally heard after decades of silence. The farmhouse still held secrets, but for the first time in a long time, those secrets were beginning to speak. Helena knew the journey ahead would be long and painful. But she was ready, because some stories, no matter how dark, are worth telling. The farmhouse had grown quiet again, the whirlwind of discovery settling into a tense stillness. Helena found herself drawn back inside its ancient frame, as if the house itself held the answers she desperately sought. The walls, thick with decades of secrets, seemed to pulse with unseen life. She walked slowly through the rooms, her flashlight flickering against peeling wallpaper and dust-covered furniture. The air was heavy, thick with the smell of old wood and forgotten memories. Each step stirred whispers, a barely audible rustling, the faintest echo of laughter, or the soft scrape of footsteps just beyond the edge of hearing. Helena's mind raced with questions. Who was the man the children feared? How had he held them captive for so long? And most importantly, was he still here? Her search led her to the cellar stairs, the very spot where it had all begun. Descending once more into the darkness, she ran her fingers along the cold stone walls, tracing the paths the children must have taken. The air grew colder, the shadows deeper. Then she heard a faint tapping, steady and rhythmic, coming from behind the stone. She pressed her ear against the wall, heart pounding, and the tapping turned into words, whispered and urgent. Help us. With trembling hands, Helena searched for a loose stone or hidden panel. Her fingers found a small crevice, barely noticeable, and with effort, she pried it open. Inside was a narrow passageway leading deeper underground, away from the farmhouse, and into the unknown. She hesitated but knew she couldn't turn back. Climbing through the cramped tunnel, the walls closed in around her, darkness pressing from all sides. The air was stale, tinged with something metallic, fear perhaps, or old blood. At the end of the passage, Helena found a small chamber, empty, save for a faded photograph pinned to the wall. It showed the 5 children smiling, their faces bright with innocence, but behind them loomed a shadow, a figure blurred and indistinct, but unmistakably watching. A chill ran through Helena's spine. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and the whispers grew louder, swirling around her like a storm. She felt eyes on her, unseen and cold. Who's there? Only silence answered. Only silence answered. Helena knew this was just the beginning. The shadows in the walls held stories yet untold. And the man who haunted them was still out there waiting, watching. She steeled herself, gripping the photograph tightly. This time, she would not let the darkness win. Helena stood in the cold chamber, the faded photograph clenched tightly in her hand. The image of the 5 children, smiling innocent, unaware, contrasted sharply with the ominous shadow looming just behind them. It was a silent warning, a ghostly imprint of a presence that had haunted them all these years. She felt a chill run down her spine, the weight of unseen eyes pressing in from every corner. The air was thick with something unspeakable, a darkness that seemed to pulse like a living thing. The farmhouse, the cellar, the hidden rooms, they all whispered the same terrifying truth. They were never truly alone. For years the town had whispered about a figure, a man whose name was spoken only in hushed tones. An enigma, a shadow cast over Harvest Hollow since long before the children vanished. No one knew his full story, but every hint pointed to someone who had lived in the farmhouse before it fell to ruin, a man with secrets buried deep beneath the soil. Helena's investigation had uncovered fragments of journal here, a photograph there, but nothing concrete. Now faced with this chilling reminder, she was more determined than ever to unearth the truth. She descended deeper into the chamber, her flashlight beam trembling with each step. The walls were covered with scratches, names, dates, and cryptic messages carved over decades. Among them, Helena found one name repeated over and over: Elias. She recalled Old Town records mentioning Elias Cartwright, a reclusive man who had once owned the farmhouse. Known for his eccentricities and dark reputation, he had vanished without a trace in the early 1980s. Some believed he was mad. Others whispered of darker deeds. Helena's heart pounded. Could Elias be the man in the walls? The captor? The shadow that haunted the children? A sudden noise made her spin. A low, guttural growl reverberated through the chamber.
Ow, the flashlight.
Flickered, casting monstrous shapes on the walls.
Elena's.
Breath hitched as a figure emerged from the darkness, tall and thin, eyes glinting with malice. But it wasn't Elias. It was something else, something far worse. The man stepped forward, but his face was obscured by shadows, features shifting and twisting like smoke. His voice was a harsh whisper, cold and commanding. You shouldn't have come back. Helena's legs trembled, but she forced herself to stand tall. Who are you? What did you do to the children? The figure laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the chamber. I am the shadow behind the walls, the keeper of secrets. The children belong to me now. Helena's grip tightened around the photograph. They are coming home. Shadow recoiled as if wounded by her words. Not yet, it hissed. Before Helena could react, the figure dissolved into the darkness, leaving behind a silence heavier than before. Helena knew this was no ordinary enemy. It was something ancient, something that thrived in fear and silence. But she wasn't afraid. She would fight for the children, for Harvest Hollow, for the light that could still break through the darkest shadows. Helena emerged from the underground chamber, the weight of the encounter heavy on her shoulders. The shadows she had faced were not just figments of a frightened mind, they were real. Tangible darkness that clung to the farmhouse like a curse. But the encounter had given her something invaluable. A name. Elias Cartwright. The man who might hold the key to everything. The next morning, Helena sat in the town library, poring over old newspapers, records, and town ledgers. She traced Elias's life through the scraps left behind. A quiet man, known for his odd habits. A farmer who rarely spoke to neighbors. A man who had disappeared in 1982 with no explanation. Rumors swirled around him, stories of madness, cruelty, an obsession with the occult. Helena's fingers paused over a faded clipping, describing how Elias had built the farmhouse with secret rooms and tunnels beneath the land, supposedly to protect his family from imagined enemies. Some whispered he was dabbling in dark rituals, trying to control forces beyond his understanding. But there was no record of a wife or children. No one to explain why the farmhouse had become a prison for 5 innocent souls years after Elias's disappearance. Determined to uncover more, Helena visited the county courthouse. There she found a sealed file, one that hadn't been opened since 1989, the year the children vanished, with special permission. She cracked it open and discovered reports from officers who had investigated the farmhouse shortly after the disappearance. The officers spoke of strange symbols etched into the walls, unexplained noises, and cold spots that defied logic. A few had left abruptly, haunted by nightmares. But most chilling was a witness statement from an elderly neighbor claiming to have seen a man, pale and gaunt, lurking near the farmhouse in the weeks before the children went missing. Helena's heart raced. Could Elias have returned? Or had his dark legacy taken another form? Back at the farmhouse, she inspected the symbols again, tracing her fingers over the strange markings. They seemed to pulse faintly beneath the dirt and grime, ancient and malevolent. That night, Helena lay awake, haunted by the voices of the children and the shadow's chilling promise. She realized the fight was far from over. To save the children and herself, she would need to confront Elias's legacy head-on. She whispered into the dark, I will find you, and I will end this. The night wrapped Harvest Hollow in a thick blanket of darkness, but Helena's mind burned with restless determination. The whispers in the farmhouse echoed in her thoughts, the shadow's cryptic warnings weaving through her every memory. She knew that if she wanted to end this nightmare, she had to uncover Elias Cartwright's secrets. Early the next morning, Helena returned to the farmhouse, the creaking front door groaning as she pushed it open. The air inside was stale, heavy, with years of dust and neglect, but beneath it lay a deeper, wetter presence waiting, watching. She made her way carefully through the decaying rooms, searching for anything that might shed light on the mystery. In the corner of what used to be the living room, behind a sagging bookcase, she spotted a faint outline of a small hidden door. It was barely visible beneath the peeling wallpaper. With effort, Helena pried the door open, revealing a narrow, cobweb-filled closet. Inside she found a leather-bound journal, its cover cracked with age but intact. Her hands trembled as she opened it, revealing neat handwriting fading with time. The journal belonged to Elias Cartwright, page after page. Helena read the man's descent into obsession. He wrote of voices in the walls, whispers of shadows that promised power but demanded sacrifice, described strange rituals he believed would protect his family and the land, but instead unleashed a darkness that consumed everything. One entry chilled Helena to the core. Elias confessed to binding a presence beneath the farmhouse, a force he called the Keeper. This entity fed on fear and kept Elias trapped in a cycle of torment. Elias feared it had turned its hunger toward others, toward innocent children. Helena's pulse quickened. The man in the walls was no longer just a ghost story. It was a living, evil, ancient, and hungry. The final pages of the journal contained a desperate Pleialis's last hope for redemption. Instructions to break the binding, to release the children from their prison, and to banish the Keeper forever. But the ritual was complex, dangerous, and required the courage to face the darkness head-on. Helena closed the journal, her resolve steel hard. She knew what she had to do. The fight to free the children and save Harvest Hollow had only just begun. Helena sat alone in the dim light of her small apartment, the worn leather-bound journal spread open before her. The faded ink carried Elias Cartwright's desperate words filled with fear, obsession, and a chilling hope. She traced the instructions carefully, committing every detail to memory. The ritual promised to free the children and banish the darkness that had haunted Harvest Hollow for decades. But it was dangerous, a dance on the edge of the unknown. The night outside was thick with silence, the kind that presses in on the soul. Helena's heart pounded not just with fear, but with the weight of responsibility. This was no longer just an investigation. It was a mission, a battle for the souls trapped beneath that crumbling farmhouse. She packed the few items she would need: candles, salt, the journal itself, and a small knife she kept for emergencies. Every sense was heightened as she prepared to return to the place where the nightmare had begun. The walk to the farmhouse felt endless, the shadows stretching longer with each step. When she reached the door, the air grew cold, unnatural. The house seemed to exhale, a breath of darkness that wrapped around her like a cloak. Inside, Helena lit the candles as instructed, their flickering flames casting eerie shapes on the walls. She spread salt in a circle on the floor, feeling its ancient protective power. The words from the journal whispered in her mind, words of binding, banishment, and light, as she began the ritual. Chanting the incantations carefully, the room seemed to warp around her. Shadows twisted, growing longer and darker, pressing in like a living thing. The temperature dropped, and Helena's breath became visible in the freezing air. A low growl echoed from the cellar below, rising to a roar. The walls trembled, dust falling from the ceiling. Helena's voice never wavered, even as fear clawed at her throat. Suddenly, the candles flickered violently, and a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness. The Keeper. Its eyes glowed with hunger and rage, a swirling mass of darkness and malice. Helena held her ground, voice steady, repeating the ritual's final words. The salt circle flared with light, a barrier between her and the shadow. The Keeper shrieked, a sound that tore through the silence like a knife. The battle was not just of words and ritual, but of wills. Helena felt herself pulled toward the darkness, memories of the children's fear and hope fueling her resolve. She wasn't alone. The voices of Benny, Emily, Noah, Nate, and Sarah whispered in her mind, guiding her. With one final chant, the shadow screamed and dissipated, sucked back into the depths of the earth beneath the farmhouse. The temperature rose, the air lightened, and the oppressive weight lifted. Helena collapsed, exhausted but victorious. The children's freedom was within reach. The farmhouse was silent, but the silence was no longer heavy or threatening. It was different, lighter, almost hopeful. Helena sat on the creaking floorboards, the echo of the ritual's final words still humming in the air. The oppressive darkness that had ruled for decades had been pushed back, and for the first time in over 30 years, the farmhouse felt like a place where life could return. But Helena knew the battle was not yet over. The children were still missing, trapped. Somewhere beyond the veil, caught between worlds, the ritual had broken the keeper's hold on the farmhouse itself. But freeing the children meant crossing into a place where light and shadow intertwined. In the days that followed, Helena pored over Elias Cartwright's journal again, searching for clues about where the children might be. A passage caught her eye, one that spoke of a threshold beneath the cellar, a boundary between this world and the next. The passage described a moment when the veil thinned, and spirits could cross back into the living. Helena's heart quickened. Could the ritual have opened that doorway? Returning to the cellar, Helena found the hidden trapdoor once more. This time, the air around it shimmered faintly, as if reality itself were bending. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door and descended into the darkness. Below was a small chamber, untouched by time. In the center stood a pool of still water, black as night, reflecting nothing but the shadows above. Helena knelt by the edge and saw faint ripples like a whisper of movement beneath the surface. The voices returned, soft and distant, calling her name, Helena. She reached out, fingertips barely touching the water. A warmth spread from the touch, and suddenly, images flashed before her eyes, memories of the children playing, laughing, and then fear, confusion, and isolation. Helena realized this pool was a bridge, a gateway between worlds. But crossing it would be dangerous. There was no guarantee she would return. Yet she had no choice. The children were waiting. Stealing her courage, Helena spoke aloud. "Benny, Emily, Noah, Nate. Sir, I'm coming for you. Hold on." The water shimmered, light spilling upward like a rising tide. With a final breath, Helena stepped into the pool, plunging into darkness and light intertwined. "Let me know when you want." "Part 15, you said." "Warp up story," ChatGPT said. "Certainly." Here's a wrap-up section to conclude the story with emotional impact and closure. Part 20. Homecoming and healing. Helena emerged from the shimmering depths of the other world, carrying with her the fragile forms of 5 children, Benny, Emily, Noah, Nate, and Sarah Liv, blinking against the harsh light of the real world. Their eyes were wide with wonder and confusion, but the spark of life burned bright in each of them. The nightmare that had held them captive for over 3 decades was finally broken. Word spread through Harvest Hollow like wildfire. The town, long broken and silent, awakened as people gathered to welcome back their lost children. Tears flowed freely, tears of joy, relief, and healing. Parents who had buried hope deep within their hearts now embraced the impossible. Reunion. The children carried stories of shadowed corridors and whispered fears, but also of courage and friendship that had kept them together in the darkest hours. Though time had stolen their childhood years, it could not erase their spirit. Helena stood quietly on the edge of the crowd, watching the healing begin. She understood that the journey ahead would be long. There would be pain, questions, and scars, but also hope, love, and renewal. The farmhouse, once a prison of shadows, was destined to be torn down, its evil banished forever. In its place, the town vowed to build a memorial, a testament to resilience and the power of light over darkness. And as the sun set over Harvest Hollow that evening, it cast a golden glow not of endings, but of new beginnings. The silence had finally been broken. If you want, I can also help write an epilogue or reflection section to deepen the emotional takeaway. Let me know. Helena emerged from the shimmering depths of the other world, carrying with her the fragile forms of 5 children, Benny, Emily, Noah, Nate, and Sarah Liv, blinking against the harsh light of the real world. Their eyes were wide with wonder and confusion, but the spark of life burned bright in each of them. The nightmare that had held them captive for over 3 decades was finally broken. Word spread through Harvest Hollow like wildfire. The town, long broken and silent, awakened as people gathered to welcome back their lost children. Tears flowed freely, tears of joy, relief, and healing. Parents who had buried hope deep within their hearts now embraced the impossible. Reunion. The children carried stories of shadowed corridors and whispered fears, but also of courage and friendship that had kept them together in the darkest hours. Though time had stolen their childhood years, it could not erase their spirit. Helena stood quietly on the edge of the crowd, watching the healing begin. She understood that the journey ahead would be long. There would be pain, questions, and scars, but also hope, love, and renewal. The farmhouse, once a prison of shadows, was destined to be torn down, its evil banished forever. In its place, the town vowed to build a memorial, a testament to resilience and the power of light over darkness. And as the sun set over Harvest Hollow that evening, it cast a golden glow not of endings, but of new beginnings. The silence had finally been broken.